I worry that people are falling in love with numbers a bit too much. And look, I'm a
What do
geek.
you mean by that?
I love numbers, right?
Welcome to Beyond Borders London, a multiplier series bringing together global business experts to debate what it takes to scale in this new uncertain world.
Hi, I'm Tim Harford, the undercover economist.
Hi, I'm Sagar Khatri, co-founder and CEO of Multiplier.
On this episode, we cover why forecasting is harder than ever and how the businesses adapt when their predictions fall short.
So good to have you, Tim. Today we're going to talk about navigating businesses in uncertain times. Very hot topic of the times that we live in. We have uncertainties, macro uncertainties, micro uncertainties, then we have AI. So a pleasure to have you here. We always talk about forecasting, right?
Yeah.
And you've talked about it in the past. How useful do you think a forecast is in today's climate?
I find the demand for forecasts so frustrating. I mean, I'm an economist. People think economists make forecasts. We generally don't. We're not very good at it. Most people are not very good at forecasts, right? So for me, forecasts are like a kind of intellectual snack food. You know, you got that tube, you plop the top off, and you start eating, and it's not really doing you any good, but it just seems so appealing. And I think the reason is the world is a very complicated place. You want to understand, I don't know, the business climate in Hong Kong or the reconstruction efforts following the war in Iraq. How are things going 20 years on? It's complicated. And so instead of wrestling with that complexity, you just ask for a quick forecast. And it feels like you've addressed the problem, but you haven't. So I should say, I'm not talking here about like detailed micro pricing forecasts. If I raise the price of this product by 10%, what will happen to demand? That we can do. But like the big picture geopolitical, macroeconomic forecasts, everybody is terrible at them. So then the question is, well, what should we do instead? And for me, I think it's much better to engage seriously with specific hypothetical scenarios. So if there is a sustained disruption to the global oil supply, not will there be, if there is, then what do we do? People are talking about artificial general intelligence. Let's say it comes 2 years' time, half the office population of the world, their job could be done better by a chatbot. Well, then what? What is our strategy? What is the policy response? Not will it happen, but what will we do if it does? And I think that's just a much more productive way of thinking about future risks.
That's a very good point. I have a funny story on forecast. So I started the business Multiplier roughly 4 or 5 years ago. And I've been in banking before that.
Yeah.
And I have made, just to your point, countless forecasts and in this context, business forecasts that have never come true.
Yeah.
So I would spend like months creating a model and forecasting, let's say, what will be the number of electric vehicles in UK.
Yeah.
And it has never come true.
Yeah, 2 years later, you look back and you're like, I got it wrong again.
And why did I spend so much time on it? But the funny thing is, and serendipity will have it, when I started this company, when I started this company in Singapore, we raised some money before we even started the company. So it was pre-launch. And the forecast that I submitted then, pre-launch, I don't have the company's name, I don't have registered entity, I don't have a business today. I have some money and then with a couple of co-founders. And that forecast has come true for 3 straight years. And this is pure luck.
Right. So either this is a stopped clock, is right twice a day, or maybe you understand the business, you got a sense for it. But even when you get the forecast right, though, even that doesn't necessarily help. I was asked I gave a talk a year or so after the pandemic, and I gave my talk, and then someone put their hand up and said, "Oh, you're Mr. Economist. The last person to talk to this conference talked to us just before the pandemic, a couple of months before the pandemic. And he was a scientist, and he said he was really worried about a pandemic. And he told us all about how a pandemic could spread across the world, and he was worried. So now I want you to make a forecast that's as good as that." And so I said, Yeah, sure, I can give you a forecast, but before I give you a forecast, could I just ask, you got the best forecast anybody's ever got. So important, so timely, so accurate. What did you do? And the guy had no answer, right?
Yeah.
Because he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So why are you asking me for a forecast? You already got the best forecast ever and you didn't do anything, which just it reinforces the point that it's no good if it doesn't help us make better decisions. And a lot of forecasts are not designed to help us make better decisions. So Sagar, I have said my piece about forecasts. I obviously find them a bit frustrating, but they do have a use. So how do you use them?
So I fully agree with you on forecast. One thing that I learned in the early days of my entrepreneurship was, and Sequoia is one of our investors, and I learned from one of the partners is never miss a board plan.
Yeah.
If you think about it, all these large companies, they are not founder-run, they are run by executives, right?
Yeah.
All the CEOs are hired executives. And these public companies, if they were to miss their forecast, let's say couple quarters in a row, the CEO will have to lose his job or her job. So eventually the way we've run our company at Multiplier is, it's not founder driven, it's executives driven.
Yeah.
Where when we submit a forecast, there's so much buffer built into it. And to your point, if there's a pandemic, if there is AI shock, none of it may end up coming true.
Yeah.
But eventually you do with the best of your ability. And the one thing that we always took to never miss your board plan. Sign your board plan in blood, but you never end up missing your board plan.
Right. Interesting. So Multiplier has now grown. You are running a global business, but we've already agreed forecasts hardly ever come true. The world is incredibly unpredictable. So how do you cope with changing regulations, changing geopolitics, changing technological backdrop, changing economic situation? You have to have some kind of long-term vision. So how do you make decisions in that kind of environment?
I was talking to somebody, very good point. I was talking to somebody yesterday about it. When we started Multiplier, as I was sharing with you that we had nothing, we had a pitch deck and we said, hey, this is what we're going to do. So all you have to go back and see the founding assumptions that you had about the business, that you bet your life on, are they still true?
Yeah.
And obviously there is, long-term vision, there's a 5-year plan, there's an annual operating plan, there's quarterly plan. These days people are talking about submitting a weekly MIS, which is, almost difficult to fathom. The 3 founding assumptions that we had when we started the company, 3 drivers of the business were, one was talent crunch. We live in a world where talent crunch is a real problem.
Yeah.
Right? If you think about, there's a report by Quantification which says the talent crunch in the market by 2040 would be upwards of $10 trillion.
Right.
Now that's a big number.
So this is the difficulty in getting the workers with the right skills.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Just think about it. In the US, you may have certain kinds of jobs, but they may not have those kind of talent.
Yeah.
In China, they had one-child policy, so they may not have the right demographics that can do the job right.
Yeah.
So that talent crunch is still a real problem.
Yeah.
Talent is concentrated in different pockets and opportunities are concentrated in different pockets.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a big global kind of matching problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you can't change that overnight, right?
Yeah.
And I started the company in Singapore, Tim. You require 10,000 software developers 100,000 software developers every year, but the installed capacity of the universities is just 3,000.
Yeah.
How can you change that?
Yeah.
You want to change that, it will take you decades of building institutions and also convincing students to go and take that course.
Right.
That was one founding assumption that still holds true in the age of AI and other things. The other assumption that we had was proliferation of remote working tools.
Yeah.
15 years ago, if I were to chat with you sitting in New York and you sitting in Oxford, we would be talking to each other on Skype, which barely worked.
Yeah.
Today, at Multiplier, we have our team in some 50, 60 countries, and we are a fully distributed team.
Yeah.
So that technology where you can work from anywhere as effectively as if you are sitting with me, that has really changed the game.
Yeah.
And the third and slightly unfortunate assumption, which is still true, is world goes through cycles. We are in an anti-globalization and sometimes also referred as anti-immigration cycle.
Yeah.
If you are in Singapore, you want Singaporeans first. Now there's a way of, right-aligned governments everywhere in the world. If you're in the US, you want jobs for Americans first. So we are going through a wave where immigration has become difficult.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have talent. You're not letting the talent come in. You have to go and hire somewhere.
Yeah.
So those were the 3 founding assumptions where we started Multiplier.
Yeah. So you've got the demand for workers, the crunch for talent.
Yes.
You've got remote work
Yeah.
that's become possible, and you've got to push back against immigration.
Yeah.
So those 3 pillars
Yeah.
are still holding up.
Yes.
So how does that help you then navigate a complex world, having those 3 things?
So if you go back to the founding assumptions and they are still there, you can literally double down the idea that, hey, what I wanted to build, the problems that I wanted to solve still hold true.
Yeah.
And that's where we are one of the businesses that have gone from 0 to $100 million in the fastest time.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you about infrastructure, because I mean, I find the whole topic of infrastructure absolutely fascinating. As you know, I've written histories of technology, and I also present a podcast all about things going wrong. So I'm fascinated by examples of historical infrastructure failures. So my favorite one, there's so much interest in global payments at the moment, and maybe blockchain can help, crypto, whatever. When I think about payments, I think of 2 stories. One is from 1887, where there was a gentleman who basically wanted to telegraph an instruction to buy, I think it was wool, across the United States. So he goes to the telegraph and he kind of sends this, but to save money, because every letter is expensive,
Yeah.
they had this code. So what he wanted to say was, buy all kinds quo, which was something like, buy 2 million sheep, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there was a typo. Instead of saying buy all kinds quo, he said bay all kinds quo. And bay was the code of, like, I've already bought it. Or anyway, one typo, he missed out on this massive business opportunity. And he went to Western Union and said, you guys messed up.
Yeah.
You got one letter wrong, and I lost millions. And they said, well, we do charge extra for a checking and verification service, and you didn't pay it. So it's just this insight into what the infrastructure used to be like, and for the refusal to pay to have one letter checked, this guy lost a fortune. And another story about historical infrastructure from the 1960s here in London. So Citibank rather, they had people processing payments on the ground floor, and on the first floor of the same building, they had people confirming the payments. So these 2 people working on the same payment, and you had a vacuum tube. So you write down the order, you stick it in the vacuum tube, and you hit the button, and it goes up to the first floor. And the floor above, they process it, and they phone the customer, and they verify all of this. And one day, everything just completely ground to a halt. And the guys on the ground floor are like, why are we getting no confirmation? The guys on the first floor are like, why is nobody sending us any deals?
Yeah.
And in the end, they figured out that the tube had become blocked. And in the end, they got a chimney sweep to come with one of those big, long brushes and to clear the vacuum tube out. This is within living memory. This is the 1960s. So it's easy to forget just what is possible now. But I think some of the same old nightmare stories can still come true. People still get derailed by typos, simple blockages, a rat chewing through a cable, and suddenly we're back in the 1960s or even back in the 1880s.
There's such hilarious stories. The thing about infrastructure, as you were saying, is we take things for granted.
Yeah.
Like if you are living in a moment, you always assume things were this way. Like I was giving you the Skype example, right?
Yeah.
Zoom made it possible, and before coming here last week, I was at Money 2020.
Yeah.
And I was on a panel where we were talking about stable coins. And the funny thing is, every single panel concluded, and this was the hot topic of this year and has been there for a couple of years, that stable coins are going to take over the world.
Yeah.
And it's funny how people always take these extremist positions that it's not just one rail, we're going to forget about SWIFT and we'll completely move to stable coin. You know, in the earlier parts of my career, Japan was home to me. And people have been talking about the aging population in Japan forever.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, it takes decades for you to see that effect.
Yes.
Like in the beginning of this year, we had something called SaaSpocalypse. Everybody was and still wondering, as you started in your talk, that whether we'll have white collar jobs, whether they will change and whatnot.
And we said the SaaS apocalypse. The idea is SaaS is software as a service. And yeah, it's all going to fall apart because AI is going to replace it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or maybe not.
Yeah.
Right? So people, and if you were on social media platforms in the beginning of the year, every day was anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
For everybody, right?
Yeah.
Whether I'm going to keep my job tomorrow, right? And it felt like something is going to happen next hour.
Yeah.
One thing that people forget is how past revolutions have worked.
Yes.
Like think about this. The first, before industrial revolution, the greatest minds of history were busy manufacturing, right? They were manufacturing clothes or crocheting and whatnot. In the last 10 years, the greatest minds that I know, that I have access to, my friends, the people that I think are really, really smart, they've been busy making sure you spend extra 10 seconds on Instagram Reels or extra 10 seconds on TikTok or making sure you don't abandon that Shopify cart. So people forget, when people take extremist positions or when people talk about AI taking over jobs, they forget that the challenges in the world are not limited.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the greatest minds of the planet move on to bigger challenges. So yes, if you take a view that these are the challenges and the skill set of people are rising, then we'll have a problem. But there are so many challenges to solve for.
So what for you does the right infrastructure look like for a company that is trying to take its business global? What do they actually need to do that?
At Multiplier, what we've done is we've built that global exchange of work, that global infrastructure for work, where you today, to expand to a new market, you don't need an entity, you don't need a bank account, you don't need any of that. And this came out of a personal problem that I faced in my last job team, where to open a bank account in a country like Australia and Japan, which are perhaps higher GDP per capita than the UK, or at least higher GDP per capita in our part of the world, took me 10 months.
Yeah.
So that's how broken the infrastructure for global work was.
Yeah.
So for me, global infrastructure for work or going global essentially means you should be able to expand, sell globally without paying a hand and a leg for it.
Yeah.
So we talked about infrastructure, but I would like to bring the topic back to, again, we talk about forecast and whatnot. We live in an extremely uncertain world.
Yeah.
What assumption, Tim, do you think that most CFOs want to challenge going into the next decade?
Well, this is a hot take that might be a bit controversial. So feel free to disagree. I worry that people are falling in love with numbers a bit too much. And look,
what do you mean by that?
I love numbers. Right? What I mean is, when you look at the whole history of quantification, of trying to measure stuff, it used to be very scarce and very expensive to get data on anything. You'd have to physically go out, measure with a tape measure or a thermometer, write it all down. Data sets would be tiny. And it's just become easier and easier and easier to measure everything. You just point cameras, unleash artificial intelligence, have monitors, and you're recording and you're quantifying everything. And that's very powerful. But it's also risky. So let me give you a couple of examples. In the forecasting business, there's a famous graph forecasting global computing demand that IBM made in the late 1970s, shortly before
Very interesting.
IBM's business kind of collapsed.
Yeah.
But the graph was this exponential upward curve showing this enormous demand, and it was completely accurate. But the way that they had phrased the graph was demand for globally for instructions per second. How many millions of instructions per second? How many billions of instructions per second? And the graph was totally accurate. The numbers were totally accurate. But what's missing is the context, which is when computers get sufficiently cheap, they're not massive business machines anymore. Kids are using them to play Space Invaders and Pac-Man. You've got a totally different context. And then people start wearing them on their wrist, and carrying them in their pocket. So by looking only at the numbers, even though the numbers were accurate, they missed this important context. Now you need the numbers, right?
Yeah.
But you need other things as well. To give you another example, on my watch, on my wrist, I have another pocket computer.
Yeah.
This got me around the London Marathon.
Yeah.
This thing monitors my heart rate, estimates my VO2 max, and gave me a training program. And I ran the entire London Marathon. Amazing. And what power quantification can have.
Yeah.
I also had a really bad day. And the reason I had a really bad day is because 2/3 of the way through the marathon, I just started getting terrible cramp. Why did I get cramp? Because I hadn't spent enough time in the gym toughening my muscles. Why didn't I spend enough time in the gym? Because the watch doesn't track the time in the gym. It only tracks the time you're spending running, and it rewards the time you're spending running. So this is something that social scientists call quantification fixation, where you've basically got there's a bunch of really important quantifiable things, and there's a bunch of really important unquantifiable things. And the wise decision maker looks at both. But the more data you have, the easier it is, the more you're just looking at the quantifiable and you neglect questions of quality or judgments that cannot be easily quantified. So that's my challenge to CFOs. They're my people, they're nerds, they love data, keep using the data, but don't fall in love with it. Always remember there's something else.
Very interesting. I hope my team hasn't heard what you said, Tim, because there's one thing that I say at Multiplier, and I'm guessing after listening to that you may not want to work at Multiplier. I always say speak the language of finance, not English.
Wow.
So
you need to be bilingual. We need to be bilingual, Sagar. But hey, I said it was a hot take that not everyone would agree with.
Yeah.
And I'm all in favor of the data. It's incredibly important. It's so powerful. But there's always another language to speak, and there's always another story to tell. Okay, so we can disagree in our emphasis about that. But I wanted to ask you, in this complex world, what do you think is going to differentiate the businesses that succeed and are able to navigate all this complexity, and the businesses that just hit the rocks?
I think, very difficult question to answer, but I will tell you my point of view. I think 3 things, perhaps. One is, the most important part is agility.
Yeah.
And let me tie it back to, again, your favorite topic, forecast. We used to live in a world where at the ground level, we used to do a quarterly forecast.
Yeah.
Today, you need to be agile enough to change as an FP&A person, as a finance person, as a CFO, you need to be agile enough to be able to change your forecast on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So capital allocation, and I've been doing this for last 5 years, and I was a CFO before that for a couple of years. If you ask me what is the one thing that you need to get right, is the capital allocation. The fundamental job of a CEO or a CFO is the right capital allocation. It could be financial capital, it could be human capital. And then you have, as a founder, you obviously don't have all the skill set that you need for the company, so you hire the right executives, right? So agility and the right capital allocation is very, very important. The second point is leading from the front. As I was sharing with you, at the beginning of the year, it looked like AI is going to take over everything.
Yeah.
And there was a mad rush to go and see who can utilize the most number of tokens, which essentially what it means is...
It's data again. People falling in love with the number, right?
Yes. And people call it token maxing in Gen Z lingo. So I also reached out to a lot of Silicon Valley CEOs and CTOs and CPOs understanding, hey, how are you really using those tokens? Because prima facie, it did not make a lot of sense that you were just giving, this infinite amount of tokens per engineer. You are measuring how much token that they can use, as compared to how much outcome that they can deliver.
Yes.
So that
we do agree after all.
Yeah.
We do agree after all. Yeah. Yeah. It's focusing on the number and not actually going, well, hang on, what are we getting for this?
Yes.
What are the results? But it's so easy when you've got the numbers in front of you, fall in love with the numbers and not kind of lift your eyes up and look around and ask more curious questions.
I fully agree with you on that. So leading from the front is very important. That's the second point, where any change, any macro or micro event, you are at the forefront of it, understanding and bringing it to your team. And the third point is being able to have a conversation. And you're going to love that as well, because it's again, being able to have the conversation with your team on a weekly, monthly basis. Hey, yes, 3 years ago, an annual forecast or annual commitment of expenditure was okay.
Yeah.
Today, I might come to you 3 weeks down the line and might tell you, hey, your budget is reduced by half.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because these are the times that we live in.
Yeah.
So I would say agility, being able to have those conversations, and leadership, like leading it from the front, those three things are very important for you to really differentiate your organization in this environment.
Yeah. So agility, leadership, and a willingness to have difficult conversations.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Sagar. Well, it's been a fascinating conversation. We've talked about forecasting. We talked about infrastructure and how it can let you down and the infrastructure that you need. And we've also talked about the assumptions and the attributes that we need to take us through this very challenging, uncertain world. And we even managed to disagree a little bit. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much, Sagar.
Thank you, Reem. I really enjoyed the conversation myself. Thank you.